Welcome back, everyone, to the Inside Line podcast, where the winter industry finds its edge. And in today's episode, I'm proud to say we're going to have a fun and edgy conversation. I even might say this could be a landmark episode of Inside Line in our first season.
I hope so.
Yeah, I hope so too. We don't have the opportunity to have my esteemed host, Nick Sargent, the president of SIA, on with an old friend and also a leader of, I think, an adjacent industry association, Vipe Desai. So having the two of you here today is super special and important in terms of where we are going into winter 25-26. And I just want to welcome both of you to the show.
Thanks, Kristin. Always fun to be here, and I'm really excited about today's show. As I've known Vipe for a long time, and we share a lot of common interests and stories, so it's going to be fun. But I'm not going to steal Vipe's thunder. So, Vipe.
Yeah, well, thanks so much for having me join you guys today. This is great to reconnect with you as well, Kristin, and always great to talk to Nick. There's so much that we kind of talk about offline as well. I kind of use Nick as my therapist when I'm kind of going through some stuff. I call up Nick and I just vent and unload, and then he kind of does the same. So, I think we're both facing some similar challenges.
It's a two-way street. It's a two-way street. That's for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. But you know what? It's rooted in passion. We both love our industries and the adjacent industries as well. I was joking with somebody the other day that, they asked, how often do I get in the water? And I tell them that I get up on the mountain more than I get in the water these days.
That's awesome. I have to ask, just for the benefit of the audience, because there are great stories in here. But how did the two of you meet? Like, where were you and how did you meet?
Oh, yeah, I remember that. I was one of the heads of marketing at Monster Energy, and Nick was over at Burton. And Nick, I believe you were global partnerships or something along those lines?
Yeah, I was doing global partnerships, and we were, I had a friend, I think a friend connected Vipe and I, and so I flew from Vermont out to California, met Vipe for the first time. And again, it was like long lost buddies. The conversation just started, and I think it ended. It hasn't ended. We've been doing this for 20 something plus years now.
Yeah.
And, but it was a really cool moment to meet each other. But, and Monster was in its infancy at the time, but Vipe, you were at Red Bull prior, I think. You helped get Red Bull off the ground, maybe?
Yeah. I was never employed directly by Red Bull, but I was with an agency. And in 1998, they plucked us out of all the different agencies to help them launch here in the U.S. And we helped strategize their action sports marketing strategy. So very, very early days of Red Bull before anybody knew what a Red Bull was.
Oh my gosh. As a person, obviously from the agency world, what a special opportunity.
Yeah, it's incredible to see, the good thing at that time with Red Bull is that they had people that got it. And I think they just needed an agency like ours to share some really out of the box creative ideas and help them to look at their brand as a lifestyle brand and not as a commoditized product that sits alongside of other colas and sodas and everything. And we shared that vision with them, and they had that already ingrained in us. But when we came up with ideas, they immediately knew that it's like, that's exactly what we're looking for.
I have to ask, Vipe, if you could just share a couple of other points to your background that are salient to today. What you just mentioned with Red Bull is obviously a huge part of the conversation we're going to have today, which is bringing ideation, facilitating change, and motivating people to move their businesses forward in both of your spheres. But what are some of the other careers points, if you want to mention, before we jump into it?
Yeah, I really have to go back to my early years of like when I was like probably 12 or 13, when I first got introduced to surfing, and how welcoming this community was to a little Indian kid You really didn't see people of color surfing that much back in, like, I think it was like 77, 78. And you didn't see a lot of women in the water either. So it was just really incredible to be embraced by this community. And I fell in love with the sport, and I just continued on that trajectory. I was never good enough to even look at being a pro surfer, but I had so much passion for it. And what I do remember early on was that I was more interested in the business of surfing than I was the sport and competitive side of it. Like, I had my idols that I, put up on my walls and everything, but I really enjoyed talking to the guys at the local surf shop about like the ins and outs and everything. So that was me nerding out at an early age. And as I got older, I went to a college that was right on the ocean at Point Loma College down in San Diego. And I ended up getting a job at a surf shop while I was down there. And that just continued to fuel my passion for the culture and the industry. And I think I just had some really good people around me that were kind of guiding me in an organic way and keeping my path going in the industry. And once I graduated, I moved back up to Orange County, and I ended up buying a surf shop. And that surf shop really was the entry point into the industry for me. And I'll tell you that those 9 years in the industry were incredibly impactful for me for a number of reasons, and I'll tell you, because it is a fun and long story, but something I think your listeners will appreciate as well. But my college roommate was one of the guys that started Volcom. So we were one of the first shops to carry Volcom. And, we had this funny dialogue where, we went out for beers, and I was like, gosh, I can't get any of the big surf brands to sell to me. And they're like, well, we can't get any of the big surf shops to buy our product. And we were like, well, I'll carry your stuff. Mm-hmm. Oh, great. So we started carrying it, and it took off from there. We totally fed into their ethos of combining surf, skate, snow, music, art, film, and everything. And we were just like, gosh, this is so infectious that we started an event called the H2O Winter Classic. Okay. And one day you surfed, the next day you snowboarded, and right in between it was a concert. So we had bands like Blink-182, Unwritten Law, Pennywise, 30 Seconds to Mars, Jimmy Eat World. All these bands played our stage, and the event just became world renowned. Out of a small 1,500 square foot shop, we had this giant event that was being aired on ESPN2. And people thought that we were just this behemoth of the store. And when they'd come in, they're like, is this one of your stores? Where's your big store? And we're like, this is it, And it was funny to see that. But that event is what went on to inspire the creation of the X Games and the Warped Tour.
Oh my gosh.
So
that's insane.
Yeah. So, after that, I really appreciated the fact that I cut my teeth at retail, because I feel that retail is such an important part of our respective industries. And I think some people who don't get that opportunity to work the retail floor miss out on that experience with consumers walking in and being able to stoke them out and have them come back and tell you how great their experience was, whether it was in the water or on the mountain. And it carries with you as you progress in your career. And, after that, I went to an agency where we launched Red Bull here and worked with a number of other brands. I got involved in philanthropy as well, started serving on nonprofit boards, and really got to absorb the larger landscape of the surf industry, and came to realize that the industry is just this small little dot in this larger cultural ecosystem. And it's really what's helped shape me. And I think along the years, it's prepared me for this position that I'm in now. And I think Nick has a very similar story as well. So it just kind of jives well with this conversation.
And it all started around the mountain. I'm a horrible surfer. I don't surf hardly anymore, unfortunately, but I'm horrible at it. At least I recognize that out of the gate, but I love trying. And that's my favorite sport to try outside of snow. But mountains and snow are really where Vipe and I have hit it off over the years. And we both share the same background, as Vipe mentioned, from working in retail and then working for manufacturers and wanting to be part of the business. And now we're both in these very unique positions where we're running our industry that we thought was so big when we were so small and young in our careers. And now it is a blip on the map, but the reach is truly global.
This is, literally, I have to say the Captain Obvious moment. Like, I have two incredible brand leaders on to have this conversation. And there's a little bit of like a hilariousness to the fact that you're both running trade associations. If you look at it in the rearview mirror, if you look at it going forward, you're the two best people in these roles, because it is all about the consumer today. We have to be stewarding that consumer. And I feel like that's where our conversation is going to go today. And I'm so excited about that. And before we do that, we have to get the question out of the way. And we also can choose to just blow right past it. But should we address trade shows on this podcast today?
Hit it.
Absolutely.
We share a very similar view on it. As Vipe was mentioning earlier, we talk to each other and we kvetch back and forth. And because our jobs are so similar within different industries and trade show, you don't work in the association business and don't have this trade show conversation. So Vipe, why don't you kick this one off?
Yeah, look, I think there are multiple camps out there on their views of the role and purpose of a trade show. And I think it's changed over the last 10 years, whether it was by its own doing of a maturing industry and brands taking advantage of sales reps and showrooms and the internet and any number of things that, cause disruption in that space. And then obviously, the elephant in the room is what COVID has done to the industry as well. It really dismantled the ecosystem. And I think everybody had to kind of like fend for themselves. And that's where I think, Nick and I play this, important role of trying to keep everybody together, to make sure that we can all benefit from that shared knowledge and group effort and everything. Look, I think all the brands and all the retailers can compete with each other, but what we should not be doing is competing against each other while outsiders chip away at our industry and culture. So I'm a huge proponent of trade shows and participating, but every brand needs to make their own decision on whether they participate and how they participate. But I also think it's an important opportunity for trade show producers to evolve what a trade show means today. And I think some have been a little bit slow on evolving, and that's probably making it a lot harder on the industry to stay, consistent and growing and, absorb some of these challenges that are going on. But I think the alternative to trade shows that I've seen, there are two really good growth areas. One, I believe regional rep shows are doing a phenomenal job. It's boots on the ground. It's the sales reps. It's the buyers. It's the shop owners. There's this cultural element that is captured at a rep show, and I really appreciate what's going on there. I'd love to see some of the larger trade shows kind of absorb some of that sales rep show thinking. And then I think the other thing too that's big is consumer expos. I think we have to get brands in front of consumers and engaging with them a little bit more directly. I think we've gotten too used to being on a screen, and you can't grow a brand behind a computer. You have to get out on the road and meet your consumers where they're at, so you can understand what they're looking for. And when they go to a retail store, they're excited and passionate about a product and the sport, the culture, and everything. So we can't do without a trade show. I think this new ecosystem is trade shows, rep shows, and consumer expos all working together, and they need to find how they evolve together.
Totally agree. I mean, that aligns so well with winter, and evolution is the name of the game. I often go back to the song. I can't remember the artist, but video killed the radio star. I mean, that's the space I find ourselves in here, where we're trying to evolve, but where we're questioning industry trade shows, we're questioning rep shows, as opposed to we should be supporting them and looking for a better way to support the industry and then ultimately the consumer. Yeah. I think we all agree the buck starts and stops with the consumer. We all agree the last mile of the journey is at the retailer. And I think it's really, really important that, we are supporting that journey from conceptualizing the product all the way to the consumer. And we see so often the competition between the manufacturer and the rep show, the manufacturer and the retailer, where the product is sold, when, where, and how, where the discounting starts. And, we talk a lot about collaboration. We talk a lot about evolution. We talk a lot about how do we pull it together. And it's so mind numbing when you go into a retailer and see the product. And we all agree that's the best venue, the best experience, the best community. The guys on the floor know the product inside and out. You can touch it, feel it, smell it, and it's the place you want to be. But when you see that same product discounted online, you're like, wait a minute, you're screwing the whole system up, and you're cheating your wholesaler, you're cheating the consumer, and you're creating confusion in the marketplace. And I think if we were able to collaborate with an industry show with the proper pricing, the right retailers, the right conversation, the internet, the conversation around the internet still kills me. Like, the internet's not going away, but still the retailer is concerned that the manufacturer is selling direct and using the internet to hijack sales. There has to be an easier way to do it. And I know there are retailers out there that I speak with that have online platforms that are in parity with manufacturers and consumer. And we need to see that greater evolution. But I think the trade show serves a place, the retailer show serves a place, the showroom show serves a place, and I think efficiency is the name of the game in today's world, and everyone's trying to save a dollar. But again, the old saying, you're tripping over dollars to save pennies. How do we make this more conducive and easier to do the business and the consumer to understand the product and what they want and where they're going to receive it?
Yeah, Nick, that's so spot on. I think there's a real danger in our respective industries where brands that are operated by non-borders, can quickly devalue the industry, the sport, and the culture. And, when you go on sale and you're blowing stuff out just to, trip over yourself to make a couple pennies, they're not looking at the long-term picture, and they're not looking out for the health of the industry. So I think that's something that we both face with brands that are, ill-disciplined. And I think to your point about e-com, there's something that we say in our industry that I think could, resonate with some folks in your side as well, is that, retailers can, get riled up about e-com, but really our message to them is that, look, e-com is not your enemy. Your landlord is your enemy. They're the ones that keep raising your, costs and everything. And, your store traffic hasn't improved. The per person dollar hasn't improved. Okay. And brands are dealing with tariffs and, supply chain issues and returns and everything like that. That is a smaller issue. But when your landlord is jacking up your rent for no reason, that is really your enemy at the end of the day. And we just have to find ways to work together between brands and retailers. But I think if we focus on the consumer and ensure that they are stoked and that they want to keep continuing to come back to this sport and participate and grow with it and bring their family members into it, I think that is the bigger responsibility for, guys like you and I that are, leading these associations.
Sure. And again, we join these trade associations because we wanted to get closer to the business. And at the end of the day, I remind myself, we're only talking about skiing and snowboarding and Nordic skiing. And I mean, the fun stuff, like you're talking about surfing. And, there is a business behind it, but, we have to help this industry evolve. And certainly that is the number one goal here at Snow Sports Industry America. And I know that's the same for you, but maybe you could just take a step back for a second and just kind of talk us through your journey joining SIMA and, and the organization and how you've evolved this over the time you've been there. I think that would be a cool place to kick off another section of this conversation.
SIMA was started back in 1989, and the reason why it was started is completely different than what we need to do now. So there is an evolution of the trade association. To give everyone an idea, in 1989, you had two trade show groups, one on the West Coast and one on the East Coast, that were trying to damage each other by overlapping show dates. That was harming the industry from growing and doing its business. So a trade association, SIMA, was formed to help break up these organizations and help them separate their dates so the industry could leverage both dates for the good of the sport, the industry, the business, and everything, rather than saying, hey, I can either go to this one or that one. No, we need to go to both. And we need both of you to work well with our trade association. So that was the evolution of it. And along the way, all these other programs kicked in, whether it was like Waterman's Ball, which raises money for environmental groups. I'm really proud to say that early on, the founders of SIMA had this vision to give back to our sport. They created the SIMA Environmental Fund, which has given away over $10 million in environmental grants. We also have a humanitarian fund that's given away over $1.5 million in grants. So those are two really important aspects of how the culture drives our industry. And we need to ensure that these nonprofits are supported any way that the industry can support them. Then we've done like image awards where we, honor brands that have outstanding products or marketing campaigns and so forth. We want to recognize people, webinars and seminars and all that stuff. And I think for a time we were way ahead of things than other organizations. And then I think as the industry started to change and evolve, the organization didn't evolve with it and grow with it. I think it kind of caused us to slow down a little bit and not really look further into the future. So when I came on, I really had this opportunity to, talk to a lot of members and non-members and people in and out of the industry to better understand what is it that they want from SIMA and hear them. What do you need from us? Because what you needed from us 35 years ago or even 10 years ago is different than what you need from us now. So I really wanted to go on this journey of what is it that you need, as opposed to like, here's what I'm giving you type of a thing. What do you want to eat? Instead of like, here's what you get, and it was really eye-opening for me. And I think the biggest thing that I took away was unity, from the industry. And I'll tell you that as I was going through the process of onboarding onto SIMA, I had made a demand that was non-negotiable with the executive committee. And, I said, look, the organization is called Surf Industry Manufacturers Association, but you're really not a manufacturers association. This industry needs unity, and we need to bring more people into it. We need to bring retailers and reps and governing bodies and all these different groups to have one succinct voice. If we can't come to terms to change the name to Members Association, then I'm really being handcuffed to what I can really do for the association and what it needs. So I really have to be able to bring everybody together, because I think calling it Surf Industry Manufacturers Association doesn't really allow me to evolve the organization. But when I say Surf Industry Members Association, the tent becomes bigger. Yeah. So a lot more communication has gone on, a lot more relationship building has taken place, a lot more connectivity and outreach to trade association and different groups. So I've really tried to connect the organization to as many different stakeholders out there over the years. And unfortunately, the plan I started with when I started at SIMA was never able to get off the ground because of so many different disruptions along the way. You have these macro political issues, macroeconomic issues that we had to navigate. The big elephant in the room was that we had the top 10 brands in our industry all move to non-interested parties, licensing models, non-surf owners, and things like that. And that really just disrupted our industry through and through. So that was a big hurdle. And we had a couple new ideas that we wanted to get off the ground, and we got them off the ground, but not the way that we would have liked to, because these other larger brands weren't engaged with us. But now, the focus is much more around the consumer and the retailer. I look at it like if we laid out a map of the universe, I think there would be different people who would say like, oh, the industry is the sun. No, we're the sun, or they're the sun or whatnot. And, I've looked at it going, guys, the sun is the consumer. We revolve around them. Okay. The rest of us just live in this solar system around them. So I'm really, invested in the consumer, their behavior, their expectations of the industry, what they love, what they don't love. And gosh, I'm listening intensely with what the consumer is saying. Then I'm synthesizing it back to our boardroom and our members of what you guys need to be looking at in the long term.
This is incredible. Like literally, you're speaking our language, and it's just an absolute, it's wonderful to have you here today. And you really teed this up well for me. So thank you, Vipe. But we're recording this in November, and SIA happened to just drop its participation study. And Nick, I would love for you to point out kind of some of the biggest surprises or even some challenges, whatever it is that you saw in SIA's most recent participation study.
Yeah, sure. I mean, it's a lot of what Vipe just covered and mentioned. We're doing the same thing, including getting to know the participant and the consumer a little better, so we can help the retailers move along. We can help the manufacturers move along, but ideally, we can help the industry understand who they're speaking with. And so we just launched it last week. And, I think the surprise for me is the number of winter sport participants that has been increasing the last 2-3 years. And, we just surpassed the 30 million mark. We're almost at 31 million. we're at 30,972,000. It's just, random number, just call it shy of 31. But, to think that we've got 31 million people outdoor participating in a number of different categories, which are alpine skiing, snowboard, tele, free ski, Nordic, sledding, fat bike, snowshoe, and running. And so those activities, really sing the song about who's going outside in the winter. We all know, there's a huge body of opportunity in front of us that just need to be taught how to be comfortable in the outside, be comfortable being cold, be comfortable, in the gear that you're going to buy, but I think, the real surprise for me as we sit here and we talk about, the industry, trade shows, reps, retailers, the one number that really jumps out at me are the number of skiers that are either lost from the sport, leaving the sport 100%. So for ski and snowboard, the number of lost participants was greater than that of returning and new participants combined. Mm-hmm. So basically, we're seeing more people leave the sport than return or try the sport for new. So that for me is concerning because we can see these trends that show the participants that are going forward and why sledding has the most return and the highest increase of participants. You can figure that out quickly. Low cost, do it in your backyard. $10 sled will last you 15 years. It's also amazing to me that a runner sled is now an interior design artifact that you see in people's homes. Okay, go figure, right? Yeah. But that sled is like 30, 50 years old. I mean, I had runner sleds when I was a little kid, and they were hand-me-downs from my grandfather. So again, sledding is the gateway sport to all sport activities. It's amazing to me when you get that first red sled, plastic sled, first thing you want to do is stand up on it and go down the hill, and then you make a jump. And that's how you kind of progress your interest. But, participation is such a huge part of any sport, any industry. And by being able to help our industry understand the when, the where, the how, the who, really sets you apart from other sports or other categories. And it gives that, competitive edge to the retailer and the supplier. But again, it's this is just a snapshot of that participant and the consumer, but it's the toughest part of the task that SIA has to translate that back to our members and use it as a tool. Certainly, I can have empathy for those that understand and those that don't. But it would be awesome if we could get into this cycle of helping our industry understand these numbers more frequently. And we do this every year, by the way, and we do it multiple times. So it's not like this is a brand new piece of product. I don't know about you, Vipe, if you're seeing similar trends in your participants, but it's very clear to us here at SIA and in our industry. But I'd love to hear what you think about participation and data in your space.
Yeah, that's great to hear, Nick. Thanks so much for sharing that. And I have a couple questions that I'm going to pose to you, but I'll answer yours first. We've seen participation grow. It has slowed since COVID, so it's not as steep as it was during the COVID days, but that's most sports anyways. So the good thing is that it's still growing. It's growing incrementally. And what we're seeing is two areas of growth. One is women, and the second is minorities. Those are the two groups that are driving this incremental growth. So that's good to see. I think for us, it's like if I look at a core surfer, we're probably looking at about 8 to 10 million here in the US. So considerably smaller than ski or winter sports. But, I think for us, the other side of the consumer that we have is, we have a larger aspirational consumer that loves the beach lifestyle, that wants to maybe wear a surf brand product, but they don't surf at all, but they're connected to it in some way, shape, or form. So, small participation group, large aspirational group. Whereas for you, I'd probably say it's more participation and probably, a smaller, not as small for, aspirational, but there's people who are like, oh, okay, I can't wear some of my technical gear off the mountain, but I can wear some of the branded stuff off the mountain. So I think for us, and even for you, Nick, it's like, as long as I think there's people incrementally coming in to the sport, that's a good thing. And hopefully that number at times can outweigh those that are leaving. And that's where my question goes to, Nick. It's like, I study sports and data, because I'm nerdy about that stuff. But I kind of look at my concern for the winter sports side of things is the barrier of entry and participation grows. It's like the cost of everything to get on the mountain, the equipment, the gear, the cost of traveling up. And I'll tell you, as an outsider, it's like, I'd be really fucking concerned that resorts are charging for parking and, the cost of a lift ticket continues to climb, and that would become a barrier to some of these communities that we're trying to reach out to. It's like, how do you reel that in? And is that a concern that maybe, you and Kristin have discussed internally with board or your brands or anything? Because that would be my concern. It's like, let's not price people out of this.
Yeah, I mean, cost is the primary issue for participation. We hear it constantly, and again, if it's not the the price of a single day lift ticket, it's the price of a burger, the price of parking. Certainly, I say this all the time. As an analogy, you don't go to Pebble Beach as your first entry point to golf. Yeah. You go to your local 9-holer. And you're going to pay $27 to $35 for, 2.5 hour game of golf. The same goes for skiing. If you go to, say, a Vail, a Aspen, a Whistler, a Park City, a Deer Valley as your first day, sure, you're going to spend a lot of money. Mm-hmm. We've identified that. We agree there. But, we have hundreds of smaller resorts that you can go to. Brian Head here in Utah, Smuggler's Notch in Vermont, Cochran's family ski resort in Vermont as well, Monarch Pass in Colorado. The list goes on and on and on. There are ways that you can gain entrance into the sport without paying the high dollar numbers. Obviously, people that do want to get into the sport, they look at the shiny glass on the mantle of like, I want to go to Vail. Mm-hmm. I want to have that total winter experience, which I get, but we look at race and ethnicity coming into our space as well. And, Hispanic is a large portion of our diversification that we're seeing. Black or African American, is second behind Hispanic, and we're seeing Asian and Pacific Islanders as well. And so we track those numbers too. And, we are seeing big holiday weeks here in Park City, in Vail, around Hispanic holidays, so on and so forth, which is great. But again, the point that you made around cost, the point you made around accessibility, that's a huge component. And, as much as we try hard to work with that, I just don't see it going away. And that's the kind of the crummy end of that stick, but there are ways that you can get into the sport at low cost. And there are great programs, SOS, Chill, if you're lucky to live in a ski resort town, the Friday program for the school kids, so on and so forth. But, I do raise the flag, when you get to that point where you have to pay your own way, are you going to decide to go surfing, or are you going to, stick with skiing, or can you do both?
Yeah.
Right. I don't know anybody that, might be able to do both when you're looking at some of the prices that Vipe was just quoting. But Nick, your response there is so spot on in terms of like, let's look at the point of entry of the retailer in these small towns and the role that they play to keep people, as you've said, Vipe, stoked beyond recognition around belonging to these passion sports. There was a quote that I read when we were researching this episode, Vipe. You've said people want to be part of the brands and they want to be part of their stories. And ultimately, I think what you're bringing up to Nick is like, let's not price them out of being a star in that story in their mind, right? And so both of you have, I think, such great backgrounds with consumer events. And you did mention and touch on that earlier, Vipe, in terms of like how that might help in gender participation, et cetera. But like, what does that look like today? What might we be able to get out there to suppliers to help retailers with that, or whatever it looks like within your association membership? Like that to me feels like such a natural path forward.
Yeah. As we were having this conversation, because I've been thinking about, participation and on-ramps for our industry. And that's kind of what I call them. How do we create on-ramps for people to get into the sport and then stay in the sport? And it's funny because I have an example that, I've been involved in and I've studied it. And I actually connected with the guy who started the program. But years ago, our family was introduced to hockey, ice hockey. And my son fell right into the learn to play hockey program that the NHL has created. And they reversed engineered their thinking, and I looked at it the same way when I talked to the gentleman who created the program. But their whole thing was like, we want to ensure that there are butts in the seats at games. So what do we have to do to start that journey? And they architected and engineered that whole process of that journey. And that was like, well, we need to bring down the barrier to entry and get kids into the sport. So we fell right into it. They had a free learn to play program. You didn't have to pay a dime. You just signed up for it. And the brands donated product and goods to allow kids to experience this. And we got on the ice. And then it was like, well, you got on the ice. We hope you had a good time. Now, if you continue on with the program, it'll cost you $100. And that comes with 5 slots on the ice. And we're going to give you some equipment as well. And we were like, yeah, it's like, this is a great entry. So it was just these small stepping stones and on-ramps that helped us to stay connected. And 8 years later, we're 3 days a week hockey family because of this program. We're going to games and we're a house built on surfing and snowboarding, and I look at it the same way that it's like, for me, it's like, how do I get people on boards, in the ocean? And I think, for you guys, it's like, how do we get people on lifts, and to me, it's creating these on-ramps with communities, and whether it's local organizations that are teaching people how to surf and so forth. I'm fortunate to be invited to serve on the board of Chill. And I love seeing that program and how it's evolving and expanding, and it's bringing kids into the program. And what I saw with the ice hockey program was incredible growth in diversity. Just in the 8 years that I've been there, I mean, you look at these kids and the names on their back, when they're wearing their jerseys, it's all across the board. And it's so exciting to see how much it's grown and where it's going. So I think there's probably, some lessons to learn from the Learn to Play program from the NHL that we could all incorporate. But it starts at the grassroots level. I think we've got to use our distribution communication channels with retailers. How do the retailers serve their community? Because those are the on-ramps. Let's get people into the sport, into the stores, into the products, connected with the brands, and continuing their journey.
Nick, did you want to weigh in on that in terms of innovations or ideas that you've seen either in our market or in tertiary markets?
I mean, there are so many sports that have these learn to actions, and I think it's awesome. And my kids played hockey too, and they got to a point where they had to choose: do you want to ski race or do you want to play hockey? And it was heartbreaking to have to make a choice because they were having fun in both. But the demands that these sports create for kids and families is through the roof. Mm-hmm. And everyone has challenges with just, putting their kids in the right sport that's right for the family, right for them. We talked about cost. Certainly, once you get on a traveling team, playing hockey is as expensive as going skiing for a weekend or snowboarding for a weekend. Same with lacrosse and soccer and baseball. I have a friend whose kid left skiing to pursue baseball, and he is going back and forth, West Coast, East Coast, almost weekly to play the sport. So again, choose your poison. But the one thing that I do see is just the challenge that the participant has in choosing a sport that's right for their family and right for their situation. Even choosing a sport that's not right for the situation and the sacrifices that go into it. I love the Learn To programs. I failed to mention Share Winter in mentioning Chill and SOS. So, in winter, we have a lot of really cool programs to help get people on snow. Aside from that, and the choices that people make, the thing that I see the most is competition with screen time and getting kids outside, off the couch, away from the screen, where they're actually participating, making friends, being social, learning what competition is about, but also, exercising and learning how to condition yourself. So I think there's a lot of distractions and a lot of challenges, and the Learn To programs are amazing. But I think the real, kind of the elephant in the room is just the challenges you have with competing sports or screen time or geographical locations.
I think there's a bigger opportunity than ever right there because we all have kids, right? All three of us, they're probably roughly the same age. My daughter, who's about to turn 20, is literally like so disgusted with the transactional content that she's being served in her feed that she literally is looking, it's very important where she buys from. She likes to buy from independent businesses. Ideally, she loves to, purchase used goods and whatever. But like where I'm going with this is getting outside with her friends has become a huge priority with no pushing from me because they are just exhausted from this. So I feel like that appetite's there. And if there's a way that we might be able to arm the local retailer or the local rep or whatever those boots on the ground look like, whether it's a school function or something else, like I feel like now's the time to strike.
Yeah, I mean, we talk about this a lot, and Vipe and I talk about this offline a lot too. We all come from a retail background, one way or another, and really, what we are looking for and striving for, from a manufacturer's perspective, to support the retailer, is to create that experience and really enhance the community that the retailer is on the front line of. And getting people excited about going to a retail store. I mentioned earlier, feeling the product, seeing the product, smelling the product. If you've put a down jacket on for the first time, that smell, it's like when you open a can of tennis balls, it's like, open that one more time. It smells so good. That down smell. I don't know how you guys feel about it, but I put it on. I love that smell.
Oh, for me, it's a bar of wax or a new wetsuit or a freshly shaped surfboard. I mean, resin, neoprene, and surf wax. I'm in heaven.
Oh man, it's so good. I feel the same way about skis and snowboards, the smell of the base and certainly wax. But, that's, kind of doubling back, back to retail and just how important that the role of retail is for our industry. And, whether we're, SIA is a manufacturer, is primarily a manufacturer trade or association as well. We've broadened our scope to include resort, retail, rep, everyone, because it is the entire community that we speak to. And, but we're in business to support the retailer. And when we're undercutting the retailer to make a quick sale, we're really cheating ourselves. And that's, I think we both agree that's affects both of our industries, hitting the nail right on the head.
Yeah.
I mean, really, the consumer is right in front of us, even through all this change. I just feel like you're both leading memberships that are operating through incredibly challenging environments. I mean, what you said about rents, Vipe, I was like, oh my gosh, that's like one more thing in like this huge domino stack that they're facing right now. And suppliers are right along with them, but we can't lose sight of the opportunity we have right now. It's almost like seize the fragmentation and like hone in on serving that sun, as you say, like the center of our solar system, the consumer.
Yeah. And look, 100%. I think, the consumer, from what I've seen and heard as I talk to people, is that they are so hungry for in real life experiences, and, even the industry as a whole is really hungry for it as well. Nick, you guys have your snowboard expo coming up. It's like, I think that is an incredible opportunity to evangelize to diehard consumers so they go out there and just profess how much they love snowboarding, and that's what you want. You want to create that environment where they feel they're a part of the culture, they're driving the culture, this is theirs, it belongs to them, and they are helping to make it better for everybody else. It becomes very tribal, and we created an event called Surfscape, kind of on the back of Snowboard Expo and Sea Otter Classic and other events like that as well, that bring consumers and brands together. And to highlight the hunger that people who run our industry. Just a couple weeks ago, we had our one-day super summit, and it was incredible, the energy that came out of that day, the talks, the sessions, the conversations, the retailers. There was like 10 pods of people breaking out, talking to retailers, having these super deep discussions. And everybody at the end of the day was like, we so needed this. We needed this. This is something we can't do at a trade show. We can't do on a Zoom. We needed this. And immediately people were like, can we do one in the spring? And I'm like, no, we're going to do this again next year. Right now, you just have to carry that energy into the rest of the year. But I find everybody, the industry side and the consumer side, is so hungry for in real life personable experiences. They want to squeeze the Charmin. That might be a little bit of an outdated term for some of the younger folks on this podcast, but people want to get out there. They want to shake hands. They want to touch the product. They want to meet the people behind the brands. And I think that's another big opportunity that as we look at on-ramps for people, it's like we need more characteristics and personalities to speak up and speak out about our industry. And, in the winter sports industry, I look at Donna Carpenter as one of those evangelists. She's outspoken. She's, 100% leadership material and minded and passionate. In my industry, it's guys like Paul Nadi, who's the CEO of Vissla. He's just outspoken. He's passionate, and people gravitate to what he says instead of these nameless, faceless companies that are governed by spreadsheet. It's like you got to get out there and meet the people, your retailers, your consumers, and get out there and interact in real life. And why are you building this brand? What are you doing for it? And are you really talking to the consumer? Or are you following a trend that says, these products are going to be hot next year? So I think there's a real opportunity for more leaders to step into this conversation.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. That's why SIA bought Snowbound, and now we're in partnership with Raccoon Media to produce that consumer event. But I find it fascinating that, the brands really claim that they're a wholesale agent and work only with specialty or box or chain, which I can appreciate. But yet again, now they're selling direct. Or they're not participating in a consumer show, speaking directly to their constituents, because they feel if they don't sell a ski on the spot, then they're not getting the ROI. I think that's they're short-sheeting themselves. Just to your point, Vipe, the consumer wants to talk to the product engineers. They want to talk to the marketing guys. They want to see their favorite brands. They want to, be explained what is new with this product, what's different. They want to hear it directly from the brand. And so I think that consumer element is so important and is such a key touch point, and you can share in that experience with your retailer, no matter where these consumer events are, to really push potential sales to retail and help promote your retailer. But just, including the consumer in the conversation is the path forward. And it's right in front of the brand, the retailer, the industry, and people ask me like, what opportunities do you see? I'm like, the consumer. Mm-hmm. The consumer's been captivated for 55 years that I've been doing this, and on this planet, and I'm still a consumer and I'm still captivated. So yeah, it's right there.
The event, as we're wrapping up here, your point of events is the turnkey opportunity that you provide your membership, because yes, the consumers want to go and talk to these people at their favorite brands, but that's how they feel in their belief system, that they're joining that community and become part of the story, as you said, Vipe. Yeah. So I feel like that's really an important place for us to land. And interesting, that's where we started when we were listening to your background. Vipe. So I just feel like that event piece or the brand experience piece that builds community, that's a key on-ramp for all of us to look at. And it comes in many different forms, no matter what your zip code is. And I just feel like, that's something that we can't hammer home hard enough on this show. That's unity. That's keeping everyone together.
Yeah. And look, I think, even though we have responsibilities to our own industries, I think the fact that Nick and I can come together and learn from each other is so important. There's so much crossover, and look, it's important for me, to see the winter sports industry succeed. It's important for, SIA to see our industry succeed as well. So anytime we can learn from each other is a valuable opportunity. What I'll share just real quickly is, I'd invite, your listeners to go to our website and go to our Super Summit section to watch some of the videos from our summit, to just learn from our industry. There's going to be 3 really powerful sessions that we're going to put out there. And one is like the state of the industry. The other that was given by Paul Nadi. The other is about retail experiences from an incredible keynote that we got from Kevin Kelly. And then there was a great conversation with Mandy Fry and Brad Blankenship, 2 incredible leaders in our industry. But those 3, I would say, are mandatory for brands in any industry, because there's such good insights that could help people to thrive in their world and contribute to their own industries and associations.
Yeah.
Awesome. Can you give us the address?
Yeah.
We'll link everything in the show notes, but it would be great if you could say it too.
Yeah, just head on over to surfindustry.org and just look for the tab about the SIMA Super Summit, and you'll get access to all the content for free.
That's awesome. Thank you so much. Nick, do you have anything that you want to add before we wrap up today?
I think we've covered a lot of ground here, and it's always a pleasure to talk to Vipe and get perspective. And I'm so thankful that we were able to pull this one off. And I'm hoping that we can do this again, maybe postseason in the spring, catch up, see what's going on in the surf community, and certainly, I've seen the video Vipe's referring to, and it's quality material. No matter what industry you're coming at, you're going to learn a lot. So I suggest you head over there as well. But
as I said, we'll have everything linked in the show notes. And thank you so much for joining us, you two. It's been really a pleasure to have you on today.
Hey, real quick, parting shot, Nick. Since we're on record for this, I'm still waiting for my maple syrup. Okay, so if you want me back on the show, I get maple syrup. Okay, so just note, Kristin, you heard it. It's on the record.
Sitting right here.
I'm the witness.
Yeah, done.
Okay, good.
Awesome.
All right. Well, thanks so much. Appreciate you having me on. Have a great rest of the week, and happy to jump on anytime with you guys. Appreciate it.
Thanks,
Thank
Vipe.
you so much.